Welcome to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast. Here you will meet a variety of carvers working throughout North America. Drawing on our collective experience, we seek to share knowledge about this ancient art and to do our part to ensure that stone carving will play an important role in built environments for generations to come. So whether you are an experienced carver, new to the craft, or just curious, put on your safety goggles, open up your mind, and welcome to the workshop. I think we should mention that Stuart and Matthew are together at Matthew's studio, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we are.
And Stuart drove from Austin.
I drove all the way from Austin.
Which is getting closer every day.
It still took about 45 minutes.
Oh, it still takes just as long, but it's physically closer and closer and closer.
It is. It is.
I used to live in the country, and now I say that I live on the edge of town.
Urban sprawl.
Yeah. It's daunting.
Oh, yeah. Matthew, you're going to have an Applebee's popping up on the other side of your property here pretty soon. Did you see the sign?
No.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. God.
Well, they put a school right next to you.
They did. They put, more importantly, they lit up a school at night right next to me. I mean, it would look, if they didn't light it so aggressively, it would be like some sort of weird modern art project next to me, and I'd be like, okay with it. Because watching the sunset last night on it, they've got fake limestone bricks on it, and it's kind of warm colored. It's not horrible. But then at night, it's the lights. They're just all over the place. Like, who wants to break into a middle school in the middle of the night? I just don't I don't quite understand it. But that's...
You guys didn't do that?
No, not in middle school. Like in high school. If it was a high school,
all right,
I would totally get it. But in middle school, I don't know. Kids are tamer
I'm
than
just
that,
kidding.
I think.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, I know. Joel was like breaking all the windows.
I'm a troublemaker.
And Matthew, you and Stuart have history, I'm guessing, because I saw on his website that
we got a beef.
Ragan. You have a big. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh, can we have another controversy on the podcast?
Yes, we need more controversy.
We do. Anyway, but for those of our listeners who've been listening to all the episodes, we interviewed Bob Ragan, and you guys are both from that studio, right?
That's
At
right.
Some point?
Yeah,
that's right. Bob
right.
Ragan taught us both.
Well,
at various points in our what do you call it? Growth.
mentorship.
So did you overlap,
Mentorship.
or were you at separate times?
Yeah, we did briefly overlap.
Yeah, it was back in I guess it was 96 after I graduated from Southwest Texas State University with a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I had to go out in the real world and see if I could find a job, related to making art, specifically stone carving, because that's where my interest was. And so my dad found an article in Southern Living about Bob Ragan's studio and their business, and he said, you ought to go visit with this guy. So I came down and visited with Bob and was introduced, and I just wanted to see if I could work there for a little while to figure out a few tricks of the trade, and he just threw me into the fire. And Matthew was there at the time, and he was kind of, he was the teacher. He was the guy who taught me, right and wrong and how to hold an air hammer correctly, because I have played around with one for a while and did a little bit of stone carving, and I was like the expert at Southwest Texas because none of my teachers knew how to do it, so they relied on me. But when I went to Texas Carved Stone, I mean, it was just this huge world that I had not really been exposed to. And it was incredibly intimidating learning how to do architectural stuff. And but Matthew was one of the main guys who really taught me how to visualize this and how to approach, carving architectural work and step by step. And so he did an excellent job explaining it. But I remember carving one day, Matthew, I don't know if you remember this, but I was sitting there carving and Matthew came over. He's like, I don't like the way your air hammer sounds. And he was like, you need to carve it more like this, with like longer strokes or something like that. I guess I was just kind of going back and forth, and it was, he could tell it didn't sound right. Maybe it was just rattling all crazy. But I
think I had a theory that, and I don't know. I mean, at the time, I had this theory that kind of like in drawing, like rather than scribbling like little short scribbles to make a line, it was better to make a confident, long line.
Yeah.
And kind of was trying to translate that into stone carving.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And no,
sorry for my past self.
No. It was so helpful because there's all these funny little moments that I remember, these conversations and little tidbits of information. I remember one time you said, when you're trying to score a line and you want to really ride that line as closely as possible, you said, picture you're driving down a highway and you want to hug that, like the yellow line, as tightly as you possibly can as you're going down the road. I was like, that's a great analogy. Just little things like that. And it just stuck in my head. I think I even remind myself of that quite often, hug the line.
Wow.
Because I had this one project we were doing for Bob, these big panels for that Perrin project. You remember that, Matthew?
I do. I was about to say that one of the great things about your timing of coming in to the shop when you did was that we were doing really massive panels that were semi-repetitive, but not completely repetitive. And so
there's a nice
there was
variety.
The whole shop was full of carvers carving kind of the same thing. So it was just it was easy to throw you into the beginning of the process and just kind of walk you through it because there were so many examples,
Yeah.
It was just like you could just look around and see at the time it was trying to think who was there. Shelby was
there. Yeah.
And was Joe still there?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I'm almost positive he wasn't.
There was another carver there, though. I can't remember who it would have been.
I have to look back. There were a couple that came in between while I was there for a while. But
it's just such a great way to learn, you know? I mean, it was perfect.
I remember we had this huge pattern and Bob said, okay, I want you to score around the lines so that you have those lines established on this panel before we start, drilling into it and establishing the depths. And I was like, okay, that sounds good, but I'm going to be safe, is what I told myself. I'm going to score a little further outside of the line. And I did this whole piece, and Bob came back and he said, why did you score so far outside of the line? It's like a good quarter inch, which does nothing for you. And then he explained the whole idea is to get it right on that line so you don't lose it. I was like, oh, little tidbits, but
any other tidbit? I love those little, the pieces of knowledge that stick with you. Hug the yellow line.
Oh,
I don't like the sound of your chisel or your hammer.
Well, that's gonna be a Matthew quote.
Yeah,
it works. It stuck.
Bethany certainly wouldn't have liked the sound of that pneumatic hammer.
Not at all.
Oh man.
But that's where that is kind of like when you at that time at Texas Carved Stone, it was like it was very much about like getting the stuff done. I mean, not sacrificing quality, but like moving just as fast as we could.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is really interesting because all of the people that we've talked to so far have mostly come either from the St. John the Divine workshop or been taught by people from there, or from the National Cathedral or taught by people from there. But I was thinking about this morning. You and Stuart are from Bob Ragan, who is self-taught. So you're like the third, if we're talking about like lineages. And you guys are kind of the rogue camp here. And please tell us about
we were like the creatures that evolved off of Australia.
Right.
That's right.
We got separated from Pangea, and now we're like showing up like a
yeah. So tell us
platypus,
about that world. Like, you guys know a lot of stuff, which probably we don't. Like, how many people were there? I mean, you met like Matthew. You mentioned that it was very production focused. Like, yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, what's it like to be the platypus of the stone carving world? Yeah.
Well, it's just, I I knew enough to be dangerous before I showed up to Texas Carved Stone to learn how to carve, and I would just use any tool I could get my hands on that I thought could help make the job go quicker. So, and I have a lot of old habits that I still use that a lot of carvers might raise their eyebrow at. Like, Matthew and I joke about how I should start the Stone Scrapers Guild because I'm known to use an X-Acto blade a lot of times to do really tight, tiny details on my limestone carvings. I mean, when you get super small.
But I mean, to fully represent that, that's primarily when you're doing portraiture.
Yeah, for the most part, or also when you're trying to carve a face on a relief carving that's about as big as a quarter. There's no chisel small enough. Well, there are, right? But I mean, you know what I mean? It's like with limestone, you can kind of get away with that. With marble, you're going to be working on it for a while. But with limestone, tends to lend itself to be a little more, forgiving and kind of works with you. It doesn't fight you too hard. So, but anyway, I just try to use all types of tools to get the job done. And more often than not, I do use my pneumatic air hammer. And, I was doing some lettering the other day, hadn't done it in a while. And when I first started up on it, it was so daunting. And then, on the second day, I was just moving and grooving, and just, your mindset just gets so in tune to being on such a small level that, I don't know, it's like your body kind of retrains itself again. But, so that was kind of fun to see if I could still do that, and it worked out well. But I still always use hand tools as well for finishing. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is X-Acto knife. That's a new thing. I don't think I've heard of anybody doing that before.
I think that's something you can get away with Cordova cream.
Yeah, and a little bit on. I do it on looters.
Texas, you do?
Looters, yeah. Really small stuff though, like eyelash.
What is Cordova cream?
It's just like a real nice creamy limestone from Texas. It's pretty common. They ship it out all over the world, but it's so readily available too. Mm-hmm. So
it's similar to French limestone.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get a really great piece, and then the other times you're like, what is this? You can really hit a pocket of dirt inside, and that becomes problematic. But we've been getting some really good stuff lately, so it's been nice. Knock on wood.
This is interesting because, I know Stuart so well that actually I think that it would probably not be a good interview for me to just BS with him for an hour. So it's really nice to hear your questions, Bethany. Forgive me if it feels like I'm taking the back seat, but I appreciate where you're taking this interview.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, but I do want to know more about the Ragan studio, or what was it called?
Texas Carved Stone.
Texas Carved Stone. Mm-hmm.
Texas Carved Stone. Okay.
And I still work in that studio. Like that studio space. Okay. So Bob is kind of semi-retired, but that space still exists, and I rent it from. It has a new owner of the property, and I rent it and I share it with Larry, who also worked with Texas Carved Stone. And then Bob comes in every now and then and works in that space. So for now, it's great. It's such a wonderful space.
Wow. So you went there after college and basically
I did
kept going?
Immediately. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember when I graduated from the school, the Dean of Fine Arts I was having like a senior show hanging up and had a bunch of sculpture and paintings and things on the walls that I did. And he said, well, now that you're graduating, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I guess I'm going to try to make it in the art world. And, and he said, yeah, well, reach into the monkey bag. And I thought, mother effer. I'll prove you wrong.
What do you mean? Reach into the monkey bag?
It like, good luck, buddy. Going to try to make it as an artist. I was just, I don't know. I was really taken aback by that.
That's what the dean of the art school said.
But you know what? I'm so grateful he said that because it kind of lit a fire under my ass.
Well, they have to say that. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's like, they don't really enforce you taking business classes, which I think should be an absolute must for anybody trying to go out in the art world.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just crazy. That should be the main thing you take. But but luckily my dad was really good. He, totally different mind than mine. And he's more of a bean counter and accountant and that kind of thing. So he taught me how to cook the books. No, I'm just kidding. No, so it's been a challenge over the years. You have your ups and downs, and when it's really great, it's really great, and when it's really bad, it's like, ugh.
So how long were you at Texas Carved Stone before you struck out on your own?
I was there I actually just went there to try to work for at least a couple weeks, more of a summer job, because I always knew I wanted to start my own studio and make my own artwork, but I wanted to learn more about carving. So, I went to Texas Carved Stone, and Bob said, well, we have this huge project going on right now. I've seen some of your carvings you did in school. You know how to use the air hammer a little bit. I'm going to teach you how to cut with the saws and grinders and all that. And so, but he, like I said, he threw me into the fire with all of that, with that job, because they really needed some help. And I feel like it seemed almost like it was forever, but I learned so quickly and learned how to do all these just wonderful carvings and how to approach it. And it really gave me so much confidence. And everybody that was in the studio, it was just so helpful to watch them, to see how they approach things. But I had such an interest. It wasn't hard work for me. It was just so fascinating, and it was so exciting. Every time you'd learn some new part of the process, it's just so accumulative, and so it just adds and adds to your knowledge. And it takes so long to do some of this stuff, you remember it. It took so long to learn how to do a lot of these steps of the carving, so much time involved, that you'd learn it and hopefully retain it for the next job. And you just have more and more confidence, and you have to have less instructions from, Bob or whatever to produce and fabricate some architectural piece. And
was that a difficult transition from the sort of university, I'm making my own stuff, to here I am in the shop and I'm doing architectural stuff to other people's specs?
It was challenging, but I was so hungry to learn how to do these things. I was so befuddled. Where do you start with this? You have to have a good ruler. You have to, use a tri-square, and you learn how to terrace the stone, and you have to do each step of the way so cleanly to go on to the next, so you don't get lost. It's kind of like building a house. You have to, the foundation has to be poured correctly and nice and flat, and and then they put the sticks up, and they start having to make sure everything is nice and tight. So it's just, as you go, if you do it correctly every step of the way, it's going to turn out better. It's like the old term, fast is slow. Or wait, did I say that right?
Slow is fast.
Slow is fast.
Yep. What is terracing?
Well, I call it terracing. That's just, it's like if you take it kind of reminds me when you see a mountain and people cut out parts of the mountain, to establish other little areas, either for houses to be built on or farmland. Think of like Machu Picchu.
Yeah. So what would you do that for in carving?
When you're cutting out certain parts of a sculpture, you have to take away first what you don't want in a systematic way, like big, sometimes they're rectangular blocks, and you start just taking big chunks away, and then you can kind of fine tune the silhouette of the project. So it's just it's just a way of just kind of slowly, systematically taking away parts of the carving, so that it's taking away the guesswork of where your boundaries are.
One of the things about I've been thinking about your first question, Bethany, about thinking of the Ragan School as a third. But one of the things that was informing our education there was that Bob has, he had this really great eye, but he was trying to translate it into a way to teach people at all these different levels of capability.
Right.
And so one of the things that we would do is, in order to keep control of the final carving, we would, like, as you started to carve and on the hammer, there were all these like controlled methods. So one of the things, like the terracing thing, was a way of like controlling the depths, being able to say, okay, take a half inch off of this whole area, almost like a paint by numbers sort of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it was a way of maintaining control of carvers that were all at these different levels.
That's right.
Because there was a period there where there were like 6-7 carvers, and some of them didn't know anything, and some of them were totally, you didn't need to talk to them at all. So
well, it was almost like this merging of, you started out as a cutter, right?
Right.
And if you could cut out this nice section out of this, mantle, and clean it up and have everything super tight, then we'll take you to the next step, and that might involve a little bit of carving and shaping. But yeah, it was a safety, it's like a quality control way of approaching things. And I guess they do that probably in most mills,
Yeah, but it translates into, like, I still do it the same way, because it's so nice to know exactly where you are.
Right. Exactly. You can pick it up. You can put it aside and pick it right back up. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of things you learn.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Speaking of things you learned from the Bob Ragan and Mary Condon school of stone carving, you spoke about how, you wish there was a greater focus on business. Did you learn any of that business stuff through Mary, or outside of that?
Yeah, yes. I don't know that I appreciated it as much when I was working with Bob and Mary, because I was still, it's not like I was taking on a project and getting the whole commission. I was working for Bob and Mary, so it was a paycheck that was, depending how many hours you work, that's what you got. So I wasn't as in tune with how to deal with the money and how to, bid jobs properly until I was really out on my own. But then I just learned, I really appreciated later on how hard it is to do that, especially when you have a bunch of people working for you and you have to figure out, okay, well, we're going to get this guy to work on this project. And, it's just a lot of juggling. So I really appreciated the way that they were able to run that business and keep everybody going. So there's just so much behind the scenes to make that work. When you're on your own, which I've pretty much always worked on my own, I've had a couple of people work for me in the past, and sometimes it gets hard, especially if you don't have a lot of business, to keep them going, and paying them. So, for the most part, the last couple of years, I've pretty much worked on my own. But if I have a project that I need a lot of help on, I can always reach out to Matthew or Bob or a lot of times the stone mill. Those guys can kind of hog a piece out for me, and break it down for me, make it a lot easier for when it comes into my shop, and then I do my thing to it. But it's just kind of strange. It's always evolving. Last couple of years, I've done a lot of sculptural pieces, which is what I've always wanted to do. So I'm kind of in control of the project. It would be hard to just cut somebody loose on it, because I'm literally sometimes figuring out a piece as I'm developing it. So it's not always fully developed in the very beginning for some of these projects. But yeah, it's just kind of more of a control thing for me, quality control. So I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you so much. Yeah, I can imagine sometimes that would be, from a creative standpoint, a little bit more difficult to quote, right from the beginning when part of the creation happens in the process, right?
Yeah. But I've gotten pretty good at it over the years. But when I give a quote, I try to stick to that number.
Right.
I'm not one of these guys that say, "Oh, well, this took longer. I'm gonna end up having to charge you more money."
I didn't know you could do that.
Right? Is that allowed?
That sounds awesome.
I always, Matthew and I joke about this, and I don't know. Matthew's, how do you bid a job? Well, what I like to do is Matthew's genius idea, and I was like, wow, I never thought of it this way. I like to imagine a stack of money next to this sculpture when I'm finished, and how high that needs to be in order for me to be happy. And once it gets to that level, and I say, yeah, that's probably enough money for this project.
Yeah. If only we could do that all the time.
Yeah. But, I think you just get better after a while. You know how long it takes you to do something. And after enough projects, you hopefully figure it out. But
well, something that Stuart, on projects that we've done together, like that we both kind of have slightly different approaches to bidding, but it's really nice. And I've done this with Bob and Mary too, but in fact, I learned it from Bob and Mary. But like both of us approaching it with our own style and then coming together and being like, well, what numbers did you come up with?
Yeah.
And then kind of seeing like the things that you hit right on the money together. It's like, okay, that's it.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
that does work well. Yeah.
But it would have been nice if if we'd all taken some business courses.
I think so.
Yeah, but do they teach you that in school? I mean, so Joel, when you said business advice, is that what I mean? There's lots of different aspects of business. There's the bidding, but then there's also bookkeeping. There's marketing. There's like what aspects of business were you thinking? And like,
yes,
I don't know. I feel like
all of the above.
Lot of all of the above.
Well, the carving from a business perspective is so interesting because one, you're sort of acting as a contractor, right? And another part, specifically what kind of work you're doing, you're acting as an artist, and then also you're self-employed, but sometimes you are the employer, general manager, and so it's so interesting just to get everybody's thoughts on this, and then have everybody no right answer right away. You just got to figure it out over time. And for those in the midst of figuring it out, it's like, oh man, I wish there was a good answer. But yeah.
Well, there's little things kind of like Matthew, do you remember when we did that job for the University of Texas when we did some work on the exterior fence for the president's house at the Littlefield house? Yeah. And oh man, this was just not a regular job where you just show up and you tell them how much it's going to cost something. They had all this restoration that needed to happen in this red sandstone, and it had been piecemealed, put back together over the years, and was really kind of just really kindest way to say it. It was a very eclectic way of keeping this fence together over the years. It had just been, you had people that were skilled that work on it in the past, obviously, and then other people where it looked like they just got some student off the street and said, hey, slap some concrete in here and we'll call it a day and paint it red.
That is literal.
I mean, it's really crazy, but you get people involved who are very proud and part of the architecture school, and there's a lot of job justification, which is fine. Where when we had to deal with these people, we had to jump through so many hoops with the general contractors involved and the restoration professionals and all that, and we had to do all this testing for this material and site visits and meetings at the university, and it was just so many hoops to jump through. If we didn't charge for our time to go do all that mess, we would have lost our butts on that job. But we did. And luckily, I thought it ended up being a great job, but it was like in the end, we just did it the way we would have done it for any other job. And it turned out great, But there were so many hoops you had to jump through that we had to charge accordingly because of all the hand holding. So most jobs are not like that, but you have to be careful when you're doing stuff for the city. They want different types of insurance and putting up
just knowing all those
safety stuff around it,
those different things that
yeah, it's just a lot that you just don't know walking into it. You're just like, I just want to make art, but this is part of the deal.
Like save for taxes. That's something I learned.
Oh God.
Oh.
See, yeah. But thankfully, there's an organization where there are like-minded people that you're able to bend the ears of one another and listen to a fantastic podcast talking to them about that very topic. So
that's right.
Stonecarvers.
Stonecarversguild.org.
So,
that's right.
Little plug there.
So, Stuart, after spending a few years with the Texas, whatever the Ragan studio is.
Texas Carved Stone? Yeah.
Texas Carved Stone. Your reaction was not, I'm going to work at a grocery store and have a day job and then make art so that I can actually make art. Like you.
Oh,
you
no. I leaned in. I was so excited. I mean, when I look back on it, that was the most important year of my life. Hands down. The longer I live, the more, I can't tell you how many moments I pull, knowledge from just little things that I did there that I remember all that. It's amazing how much of it stuck in my head. I may have to kind of work hard to remember how I did it, but it's there, it's embedded. So, it's all just accumulative. And I still get, I'll see Bob and I'll have some project where I'm working on, I'm trying to move something, and Bob tells me shows me a little trick of how to move something with straps with the bridge crane and flip a big stone over without chipping it or hurting it, a way to rig it up. And it's little tidbits like that I am just so hungry for that knowledge. I hope I never feel like I've arrived as a carver. I mean, I'm a newbie. I'll be honest. I mean, I don't have all the knowledge of the way, a lot of architectural terms. I'm the worst. I am absolutely the worst with this stuff. When I hear like Kincannon talking about architectural work, or, Nick Fairplay, or, all these guys, they're just fantastic carvers who worked on cathedrals. And, I feel like I'm just kind of almost coming in, like off my little island, and so, I'm probably do more fine art, more sculptural type pieces, but I do the architectural. I enjoy it, but I still have so much to learn, it helps keep me disciplined. It's another thing Matthew said one time, the architectural work helps keep you disciplined.
Well, you say that you're a newbie, but actually, how long have you been carving?
Well, since I was like 12.
So how old are you?
50.
So,
but you know what I mean? I mean, it's like,
sure.
I don't know.
Well, you and I often comment on how we feel like the young whippersnappers in the guild.
Oh yeah. I was the youngest member. I think it was
for
back
quite
in
a while,
2000 or 2001. Yeah. I was the youngest member. And then somehow Walter talked me into being a president in one of these meetings when I was hammered or something. One of these guild meetings. I said yes. A lot of work. But yeah, no, I've been, the guild has been wonderful. It's such it's like a fraternity of carvers. And if you just have a question, you can really cut to the chase and just call these guys up and say, hey, what would you do here? Or do you have a source for this stone? It's just so nice to have that more than anything. And these podcast series you guys have been doing, I cannot say enough good things about it. It has been such a joy to listen, to really be able to hear people tell their stories. And it's just such a nice variety of conversations and life experiences. It's just been really, really wonderful. Well, so thank you all for your time on that.
We can cut that in post.
I'm blushing. I'm blushing.
So what are some of the insolvable problems that you run into right now where you have to go and ask for advice? Like you mentioned the whole flipping stuff without damaging it.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to ask somebody about doing gold leaf on stone. I want to experiment with that with some pieces, just for some of my own pieces. I may need to pick some brains on that, maybe. I watched a little bit on some YouTube video last night of some dude without a shirt on with a bunch of tats in his backyard that he was trying to show how to do it. It's like, there's got to be something better than this. I didn't look very hard, but
Bethany, have you ever done any of that?
I've done gold leafing, but not on stone.
I don't think it's too terribly difficult, is it?
No.
I mean, there's some finesse.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's one of those fun things that's that takes some practice and is messy and easy to screw up, but then once you get your flow and figure out the finickiness of the material, it's kind of cool and fun,
Yeah. Oh, it's just one of those little things I want to play around with. So
I suppose you don't really know what your insolvable things are going to be until you run into them. And that's sort of the fun of it.
That is the stone carving mantra.
That's right. I'll let you know when I get there. I usually call up Matthew, and come over, hat in hand. Matthew, can you direct me how to?
And then I make something up.
You're a genius.
Well, here's what I would.
That's great.
It at least helps me know what I don't want to do. Sometimes that's.
Yeah, there you go. Stuart, I would. For our podcast, I would be curious if there's been any insights that you heard or things that have stuck out to you in the cat release thus far.
Joel wants to get back to how good the podcasts are.
Yeah, and any more compliments you can just throw out there, that'd be fan.
Oh man, I just love hearing all the old stories that some of these guys have where they worked in the cathedrals, and how some of the old master carvers, how they just approach things. It was just so, man, some of those stories, they were really kind of pretty strict, and I think somebody kind of visited about how with working with Bob and Mary, how I didn't grow up and I didn't learn in that environment, that strict environment of, no, you can't do this. You're not ready for this part yet. If you said, hey, can you kind of show me how to do this little thing? Bob would have no problem, or Matthew, or whoever was in the shop, say, yeah, let me show you how this little trick works. And they would just share every bit of knowledge they had with you. And it was really, the older I get, the more I appreciate that after hearing these stories from these old guys who had to basically just claw their way to find, get information on how to approach something. So I think the really good guys are not afraid to share their knowledge and how to approach some of these projects, some of these parts of carving. And, they're still going to be considered the master. They don't need to fear being kicked out of the way, by some new kid, they're good at what they do and they stand behind it and they don't have to sweat it, So,
it is such an interesting impulse to hoard knowledge, especially something with stone carving that is, I don't know if it's infinite, but it's deep. Yeah. You can just keep digging and learn and keep learning new things. So why hoard?
Yeah.
Why hoard at all?
Yeah.
It's,
and most people aren't going to remember it anyway.
No, they don't really care.
They just want to watch it.
Their eyes glaze over. You start talking about technical stuff.
Oh yeah, that's real neat.
That's neat.
Where's the wine?
So, how many people went through Bob and Mary's place and tried to work there and just couldn't cut it or hated it?
We'll do that off mic.
There's probably a good amount of people that. I get this a lot when I have people contact me and they say, hey, do you teach stone carving ever? And I kind of like to hear them out a little bit because some people genuinely really want to learn. And some people they really want to learn, but they just don't have the mind for it. They think they do. And then they get in there and you try to teach them really basic simple stuff, and it's just so hard for their minds to wrap around it. So some people, I think, you could teach them to do things so far, but then they're just going to be like, they don't have the bandwidth to stay with it, But then some people just love it. They may not be very good at it, but they love it, and they have a lot of tenacity, and they keep after it. And all of a sudden they kind of develop this thing and they figure it out. And it's kind of like Walter said, it's in the blood, it's in his blood, So, for me, I think it was always in my blood. I mean, as a kid, I would take my dad's screwdriver and hammer, and I would go chisel out little fossils in the cliffs outside of Austin with my friends. And I think it started from that. I liked the resistance of carving these fossils out. And then sometimes I'd find a chunk of soft limestone and I'd, make an ashtray for my grandmother or something like that. And it just kind of evolved from that, just having an interest in it. And it was fun. It's still fun. I love carving. I mean, even when it's like times are hard and all that, it's still almost a stress relief. I'll go in and I'll just make a piece, even if it's not a commission, and just keep my head in the game. And it's just wonderful. It's what I was meant to do. It's what I can't imagine doing anything else except maybe a podcast.
So when you left Texas Carved Stone, you created Austin Stone Carving.
Yes.
And that's the name of your company now.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Where did you go after we parted company?
Yeah. So I was kind of upfront with Bob and Mary, and I said, I eventually want to go out on my own, and they knew that from the beginning, and it was cool. And it was, I worked with them for about a year, and it was just the most amazing year. And about 97, the fall of 97, I found a little studio shack in East Austin over by the airport. And at the time, the Austin airport wasn't even functioning. It was like the old Air Force base, so it was kind of going through a change there. But I worked out there, and I had that shop for, probably, I guess about 15 years. Wouldn't you think, Matthew?
Yeah, about that.
And I shared the space with another carver, Jania Ashby. She'd since passed away, but she was a really wonderful older sculptor who I've known from the Texas Society of Sculptors, and she worked in Pietrasanta, Italy, and she did a lot of marble carving, more as a hobby, I guess, at that point, but always came in and we would chat about projects, and she was just so wonderful. She's a really wonderful person. And then once she, had kind of left, just kind of had to quit because of her health reasons with her hands, Matthew ended up coming over and renting some space for a while, and that was really fun. That kind of brought Matthew and I back together again after so many years. And since then, we've been sharing ideas and working together and just kind of helping, maybe more than anything at times, just keeping each other in good spirits about the industry, but we've done a lot of fun stuff together, and we try to always keep each other afloat, keep each other going,
So what was it like when you first started your own studio? Like, how did you find jobs, and were you eating
that was all pretty much
in a barrel? And
yeah, it was before the internet really took off, and you would reach out to other architects, and I got a lot of architectural work at that time. But you'd have like my parents' friends who had, that were a little bit more well off would give me the occasional job, commission, and it just kind of started. It was more word of mouth in the beginning, which now with the internet, people are just finding me online, and they're just reaching out to me from my website. So it was hard in the beginning. You put, your name in the phone book and hope that people would call you, and you would get business that way. But man, it was so much harder to get business back then.
Really?
It really was. Yeah. Wow. I mean, now I'm getting calls from people all over the United States. who need these projects. So that's really wonderful. The internet's been good in that aspect for me.
But you created some close ties with some mills, if I remember.
Yeah.
Especially with Rip.
Yeah, with Texas. It's been a while. But yes, I had a lot of projects with the Texas cut stone. And that was really nice, but sometimes it's hard when you're working for a stone mill because understandably they have to make their cut of the deal. And then, it's nice to have that when times are lean, for sure. But if you can make it on your own, you're kind of, most of the profits are going to me, but I'm doing all the legwork too, so.
But having that relationship, like I feel like that's something that I watched you do, because
a long time.
I stuck around at Texas Carved Stone for probably about 5 more years after you left, and seeing you form that relationship with Rip was like I took note of that, because it seems like that when times are lean, that was something that you could lean on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Even if you weren't making, Rip would famously let you totally screw yourself when you bid a project,
as he should. Teach this kid a lesson.
Yeah.
No, but it was still work, and I was grateful at the time. I was very grateful. And then, like, the whole CNC thing started kind of getting introduced into a lot of these stone mills. So, understandably, it cut some of that work out for some of the workers, but it's been interesting over the years to see how it's incorporated in a lot of these mills, and you still need the human carver to do their part of it, to clean it up, and but it's the whole world's just evolving. But I think there's always still an appreciation for the real carver to carve the good stuff, all the undercutting and all the little mistakes our human hands make with the chisels that give a sculpture some life versus what a CNC machine might do, where it's just so clinical and sometimes kind of cold. It's nice to see that human mark. So,
and you said that you're doing a lot of sculptural stuff now?
I am. I'm doing a really strange piece, this huge block of Luder's limestone. I'm doing a memorial for this guy who contacted me, who I did a different piece for when he worked with the city of Austin, but he kept my information, and he wanted me to do a carving for his father and his mom, who had recently passed away, and he had a bunch of siblings, and so they all chipped in and wanted this really nice monument for them. And so it's kind of a hodgepodge of imagery, which you can do with stone, and you can kind of pull that off a lot easier than, say, if it's a painting, but it has all these personal things added to it. Like, the dad was a big fisherman, so I did a carving of some fish that are like hanging on a stringer on the side of the rock. He was also into gardening, so and the mom loved hummingbirds, so there's hummingbirds and Texas salvia, and a bunch of these Texas stars that each star represents each child. So there's 7 stars, and a bunch of swirly designs that I added in that I thought might make it fun. So it's pretty nice. So I'm almost finished with it, but it's surprising how long some of these things can take. But it's a lot of fun.
Looking through your website, you've got some amazing work in there, and it's pretty
thank you.
unique pieces, like the Space Cowboy Award, or do any pieces and their stories behind them stand out to you that you can share with us today?
That was a really interesting project. This guy named Rick Tomlinson, he is with the Space Fund, and his whole thing is kind of promoting space exploration and settling people in space and getting people moved to start living in space. And it's kind of an interesting community that he works with that. And somehow, I guess he was able to get they had this fundraising event, and he commissioned me to carve a piece of sculpture that was eventually going to be an award that he wanted to give. They wanted to honor Jeff Bezos.
So does Jeff Bezos have one of your sculptures? Is this what you're telling us?
Well, it was given to him. If he actually took it home and put it in his house is another story, but he did comment on it. You can see the video online. He was like, "Wow, this is really great. You should come up here and look at this."
Wow.
It's very intricate of a cowboy on a horse in space. And thank you. I'll see you later. Thank you for the award. I don't know, but it was a cool little piece. But it was a sculpture where this guy that commissioned me to do it. It was a original drawing from a guy who did a lot of space drawings for NASA, concept drawings. I think it's Pat Rawlings.
That's it.
Is that right?
I'm looking at it, so yes, I can confirm.
So he did the design. It was really a cool drawing, and I had to somehow try to interpret it into a relief carving. So,
is this a prototype for a NASA vehicle?
The Bronco. Yes. Someday they'll have that in space. A rodeo in space. You watch.
Uh-huh.
Mark the tape.
Looks like a good way to get around the moon.
That's right. Fun little whimsical thing. You'll just have to check it out. Space Cowboy Award. But they ended up doing a 3D scan of this thing, and every year they have it replicated in some different type of material. But Jeff got the original one, but they did a 3D scan of it, and then they replicate it, and they gave one to Buzz Aldrin a couple of years ago. So I guess they're going to just keep going with that and give it to somebody every year. But yeah, that was kind of a neat little thing. I was supposed to meet Jeff, but I think he had to exit out a little quickly at that event. But it's still kind of neat to say that was for him.
2018 was peak Bezos.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't even know who he was until the guy said, well, he's the richest guy in the world. I was like, oh, okay. Sounds like a good project. So...
Well, we just started to scratch the surface, and we're an hour in. So,
oh wow,
we're going to have you back, which is good because we're going to have all our guests back at some point. But
I still want to interview Matthew.
Yeah.
We do too.
I think Joel and I will just have to come to Texas and pin him down.
I think my interview is happening slowly over the course of shows.
There's so much to talk about.
I revealed a little bit more this episode.
You have.
That's true. Yeah. We did learn about you.
Just a touch.
We did. We got a quote. Your air hammer sounds wrong.
Bethany, of course, is going to latch onto that one. We did have. I do want to give a shout out to. First of all, thank you, Stuart, so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. You guys are the best. This is such a fun thing to do. I hope hope other people will listen to a little bit of my interview.
Well, people are listening, and in fact, we had our first review on. Where was the review, Joel?
It was through Apple Podcast.
Oh, great!
And yes, because we promised that we would. We promised that our first review would be read on the podcast. So we should fulfill our promise.
Well, hold on. I'm pulling it up right now. Stuart, any parting thoughts while I pull this up? Not kicking you off or anything, but anything you wanted to really get across to the listeners?
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm thrilled to have you highly interested in stone carving, and you should give it a go. Call whoever's in your local area and make them give you some tricks of the trade and how to do this crazy sport. So it's so much fun. I think we need more people involved, and there's lots of rock to carve under your feet, and don't be scared. Give it a go. Ruin your tools.
Ruin your dad's tools.
That's right.
Right.
You ready for this? 5 stars. Really enjoying the podcast. I particularly like the Patrick Plunkett and the latest interview with Franco Minervini. The tales they share are fascinating. Keep up the good work. I have started my stone carving journey late at almost 60 years old. By accident, really, after looking up techniques on YouTube to cut out a recess in stone, I found letter cutting videos, and here I am. LOL. I am a member of the West Riding Stone Carving Association, which is in Halifax, and keeping hand carving alive. No pneumatic tools, which will please Bethany. They run a foundation course plus others. A great bunch of friendly people. In addition, the West Riding Stone Carving Association will be hosting the European Stone Carving Festival in 2025 at Halifax, Minster. Thanks for the pod.
Wow, a little free plug for the organization as well.
See, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. 5 stars.
That's how you do it. So 5 stars, and maybe we'll read your review on whatever this is on the tape.
Yeah. The next one's going to be 5 stars. More information about Austin stone carving at www.austinstonecarving.com.
And
yes,
while we're plugging things, I would like to go ahead and plug the Stone Carvers Guild, which is making this possible. Stonecarversguild.org, which is just a great resource. And like Stuart said earlier, it's just a good group of people that are all excited about stone carving and want to share that information. So you can find out more there as well. I think that's it, right?
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
It was so much fun.
You've been listening to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and we hope that you will find us online at stonecarversguild.org. There you can find photos showing some of the things that we discussed today, additional information about our guest, and if you're so inclined, ways to get more involved with the Guild and our ongoing activities. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, we hope that you will subscribe and rate us on the podcaster of your choice. 5 stars, please. We'll be back in a month with a new episode, so until then, keep your hammer up and your chisel sharp.